Okay, so uh, we're saying that in reproducible research, the key objective is replication, right? Where you say whatever scientific evidence you found out, uh, if some other independent scientists using some independent data, separate data, different analytical methods, and in different places, different locations, using different instruments, let's say in our case computers, right? They can also come up with the same findings. Then that means, so across all these variables, if still the results are the same, that means then the findings are robust and strong, right? And it's very important to do replication in studies where there is impact on policy or regulatory decisions, right? And then we say, what's the problem with replication? But first thing is, it's time consuming, right? Sometimes the research can take years to do, and to replicate it will take much more time. Secondly, a lot of money is involved. Say if you have to repeat it 10 times, that much more money is there involved. So anyways, research always has limited funds, right? And thirdly, sometimes the research can be such that it's quite unique. It can happen, could have happened only at that point in time, so you can't really replicate it. So then what do you do? You say, okay, the alternative is a middle ground where you say we reproduce. What does reduction mean? Say make all the original data available and make all the computational code available. So these two things, right? And so what is the bigger benefit? The benefit is that it will validate the data analysis. Though it will not validate that the question that you've asked and the findings that you've done are correct, right? So, but what is the need to even validate that? You say, okay, the simple answer is that because even that has become so complex, right? The analysis has become so complex, and validation for its correctness also itself is very important. Okay, and what is adding to this complexity? One is the large amount of data, then high dimensions in the data, right? Then huge sizes that have come up, and then of course the sophistication in analysis, right? So that's what we discussed as far as theory is concerned, and we got into the project. All right, and when we got into the project, we say, okay, what we need to do here is we need to actually reproduce uh, uh, one particular project which involves uh, uh, a data which is about measuring the steps that people have taken in the walking, and then analyzing that data, right? And so our uh, so you're saying, so we've already seen this data. Now this data has three variables: steps, data, and interval. Okay, so let me get to these files. Okay, first let me change my working directory. uh, Change working directory to reproducible research, peer assessment 1. Okay, and so that's my working directory now. So say get working directory. All right, now here is what I'm the where I'm. So first thing is, let me read the file, right? So I say raw data. Okay, and the so now the first question here is, I want to load the data. I've done that, right? And then process and transform it if necessary into a format suitable for analysis. So one of the things that I need is that I need data which has no NA, right? So I use, instead of changing raw data, I use another variable called a data, right? So, and I'm saying NA dot omit. Okay, and then what I'm doing next is, see what has happened is, if I look at it, I say str of raw data, and then str of, so I'm looking at two things, a data. Okay, so str of raw data gives me these values. Here I have factors, all right, and but here I have integers which have NA values as well for steps, whereas the str of a data gives me integers which are only zeros, so there are no NAs there, right? And but the factors are still 61. I want to uh, change this because there are some dates which have been removed now, all right? So how do I see that? I mean, in fact, what I could do, I'll show you that, okay, in a while. But for now, what I'm doing is as simple as that. I'm saying, as first I convert the date into a character, which means the factors have been removed from it. All right, and then I convert it back into a factor. All right, so I execute this line of code. That is the 12th line of code. Do you have this lines of codes with you? No. Shall I um, send you? How do it? Shall I send you the file? I actually didn't want to share the code. Otherwise, people just end up copying it. What do we do? Mm, okay, right. So now what I did is this, right? If you see the line of code, okay, right. So we have this line of code, and okay, good. All right, Sarvani. What do you think, Chandramouli? I mean, I can share the code. My only concern is that uh, you guys may not put the effort then. You may just copy it and that's it. So okay. So once I've done this, it says removes date factors corresponding to any values. Okay. No, that's my comment here. So now once I execute this, let me do an str once more. All right. So I'm str for the both the things. If you notice now here I have factor with 61 levels for raw data. Okay. Whereas here I have factor with 53 levels for the new data frame that I have. Okay, so now if you're finding it difficult, then I can just send it across. Okay, I'm just sending it to the two of you for now. Okay, and then we'll see. So I'm just sending another one. Okay, so I'm not sending this exact one. A slight difference. So at least you'll be able to look at the lines of code. Okay. Um, So now I do this, right? So now what do I need to do next? Now, so this is the transformation that I wanted to do. Next is, what is the mean total number of steps taken per day? That was the second question that we had, right? And so what we need to do is saying that for this part of the assignment, you can ignore the missing values in the data set. Now I can use a data, right? I have already knocked off all the missing values, right? And then it says make a histogram of the total number of steps taken each day. So um, how do I go about it? Uh, I so I use dplyr. All right. So let's look at it theoretically. What do I have to do first, right? I need to um, group the data uh, uh, by days, right? So this data I have to group it by days, and then for each of the days I have to sum up the number of steps, right? This is what I have to do, right? And then I plot the histogram and not a bar graph, as we discussed last time. There's a huge difference between a histogram and bar graph. We plot the histogram of the steps, the total number of those steps, right? And there'll be a frequency chart, and it will involve only the steps, the total steps column of the output and nothing else. So first thing is I say, okay, library dplyr, all right, and then I'm saying, so for now, don't bother about these lines of code. They are more like chunk, okay? Or to just to explain that I'm putting my data into different chunks. So the chunk begins with three backticks, a curly bracket open, letter R, then space, okay, and curly bracket close, all right. And where the chunk ends is again three backticks, all right. So if you look at this here, right, three backticks, can you see this? Is this clear enough, right? Name of say this chunk is plier. Now here I say echo is equal to true. So for example, if I come here, let me delete this. Okay, so I'm explaining this part to you. Okay, so I said R. All right, now give a space, and let me give a name to this. I say R. Uh, let's say call dplyr. All right, so I've given a name to the chunk, and then I say comma. I say echo is equal to true. All right, and then I say warning is equal to false. So there are a lot of commands here that you can do. Actually, they are more handy in R Studio. I'm using R here today. All right. So in R Studio, the moment you type it, you will see the command also coming up. Okay. And I do a bracket close, and then I have the lines of code. So this part we will look at later. For now, let us just look at the logic of the code part. All right. So I'm not touching this much. So coming back, right? So we said, okay, fine. We want to group the data by date. So I'm using dplyr, and I say a data dot, right? So that's the syntax that is there for this code. Group by date and summarize total steps, some steps, and then I say na.rm is equal to true. I don't actually need to do na.rm is equal to true, because even with na.rm is equal to false, so that is the default way, right? Default is na.rm. We saw that last time also, right? If I say sum c na comma 2 comma 3, all right. On the other hand, I say sum c na comma 2 comma 3, and then I say na dot rm is equal to true. Oops, right? So sorry, not the comma here, the semicolon, right? Do you see this? The first one gave me an na, second one gave me 5, right? So that's how the na dot true option works. By default, it's equivalent to na dot rm is equal to false. This part is clear? Oops. Yeah. So we say, okay, I have used na dot rm is equal to true to explicitly show it. Now we get the output as required. So we have this data, and when we execute it, what we will get is, so I say dq1a, right? That was the name, dq1a, right? So this is what I get. I get 53 dates, and then total steps, right? So now if I need to draw the histogram, I use only the total steps in the uh, output, right? So if I say hist of dq1a dollar total steps, okay, and I get a histogram. Now I can make it more colorful, however, that's my choice. Okay, so I'm not going to the details about that. So you change the syntax and everything, and you'll get a better one. Okay, now I'm going, let's go through a nice and interesting way to use tapply to do the same work. All right, uh, the whole idea is that we also should brush up with our language skills while doing all these projects, right? So though it's an easy thing to just do group by, we're going to also look at tapply. All right, so first let's quickly look at the syntax for tapply, right? So now what is tapply doing? Let me make it bigger for you. So I'm saying applies a function to each cell of a ragged array, right? That is, to each group of values given by a unique combination of levels or certain factors. So I say tapply x. So next is x is typically a vector. All right. Now each element of that vector is picked up, and then what is list of one or more factors each of same length as x. So they have the same length as x. So index is a list of factors, right? Basically that is what you want to group x by. All right, the elements are goes to factors by, and the function to be applied. So in this case the function could be, say in our case, sum, etc., right? So our function is applied. So so this is how it is. When we look at the example, it'll become more clear to us. Okay, say in our case we're saying tapply, we want to apply it what, or let me do it this way. Um, First, let me do S apply, right? You understand S apply easily? S apply has only two elements mainly, X and function, right? So let me see my X is, uh, mm, yeah, okay, so, all right, so I take X as uh, steps, right? And then my function is say sum, all right? So what do I get now? I end up getting the same values again and again because the input becomes, wait, mm, hmm. Yeah, so each value of the steps is picked up and it is summed up, right? Corresponding to that particular uh, step. No, that doesn't work. What do we want to sum it up by? We want to, so basically let me just get into T apply straight away, right? So in T apply, all right, the first one is the values that I want to uh, sum up the overall data, right? So my overall data that I'm interested in is steps, right? This is the data that I'm interested in, and then I want to group it by what? Dates, right? So I say a data dollar date. Now both of them should have the same length. In this case, both of them have same length. Is this clear? That is the condition. And then I say sum. All right. So now what will happen is the sum will happen on. So when I say this is what my code is, then my sum happens on. So here, uh, so I have steps. All right. And then I have date. Right. So now both of them have same length. Now dates change, right? Here there's another date, here there's another date, and so on, right? So I'm saying the middle one, that is index, right? That's the index. So I'm saying index this data, right, by the date, which means what? Wherever there's a cut here, that cut will be drawn here, and that cut will be drawn here based on the date. All right, it's coming from the date. So now this is my uh, steps, and this is my dates. Okay, so I've drawn this cut and then I'm saying apply the sum function on this portion. It is the same thing. Basically, whatever I did with dply, the same thing. So I'm applying the sum function. All right, and let's see what we get here. Okay, so when I do this, look at the output. So I get a little different kind of an output here. What I'll do is I'll put it in a variable and then let's see what we get. Okay, so I put it in a variable called dqa, and then I say dqa. All right, or let me do an str of dqa. I say str of dqa to understand it. It says int 1 into 53. So 53 elements that we know. Okay, apparently there is only one vector that is given as an output. At the same time, I see something interesting. It says dim names. It's a list of one values. It's a list, and the date value is actually gone as a list. So basically, when I say dqa, what you see here is, if you notice, you see a value here and then a value below that. Basically, that's the name of the column. So basically, that is the name that has been given to the element, right? Say, for example, if I was to say dqa 1, all right, dqa 1 is the value 126. All right, it is not two dimensions. There is only single dimension here. That is what is interesting to understand here. So dqa 1, if I say dqa 1 comma this, I'll get an error because it says incorrect number of dimensions. So there is only one dimension. All right, That dimension has a name here. So if I was to say names, all right, names of DQA, what do I get? I get all this. Is this clear now? So basically what has happened is, unlike the previous case of dplyr, where my output was very neat and straightforward, what was the output that I was getting in the dplyr? I was getting the output as like this. I was getting the date, all right, and the sum of steps. But here now, what I'm getting is, I'm getting a single. So this was dplyr, and this is t apply. All right. Here I'm getting a single vector, which is sum of steps, and then corresponding to that, what I'm getting here is the names, right, which is date. But this date is actually a name for this particular value. All right. So now, so this can be a little tedious to work with, right? If I have to plot, in this case, I can straight away plot. All I need to do is, if I say histogram of DQA, right? Let's see what happens. So if I set a histogram of DQA, straight away I get a histogram, because DQA is just one column. I couldn't have done the same thing with the previous one. Have you understood this? What we've done? Have you understood deep T apply also? I just wanted to give you an example of T apply. Uh, I guess T apply could be a little faster over dplyr. In this case, the data is really small, right? But when the data is large, sometimes dplyr might be slower. So then you may want to use something like tapply. Okay, Chandramali, is it clear to you? Nitika, I think for you maybe a little difficult because you didn't attend a couple of other classes. But can you hear me, Nitika? Okay. But guys, is Nitika around? I don't know whether, I mean, she is logged in, but I think she's not able to. I don't know whether she can hear me or not because I don't see her mic system on. It says not connected to audio. Hmm. Okay. Uh, so all right. So the second part is also clear to you, right? Both of you. So now, what if I want to shift that syntax, right? I want to convert it into what we had using, dplyr, right? There was an output that I got using dplyr. I want to have similar output using this. So what I can do is, so suggest a way. How can I go about it? How can I go about converting this syntax into this kind of a syntax? The question is this. Let me show you, right? So if you look at DQA, all right, it shows up this way, right? On the other hand, I had DQ1A, right? DQ1A. DQ1A was generated using dplyr, right? In the DQ1A looks more like a nice table, right? Whereas the one that I have generated using tapply is a very different format, right? And I want it in this format. So I have this right now, all right? I have the name column and then the sum of steps. I want it to be showing up like this. How do I go about it? Is my question clear now? So I want to have this syntax, that output that is there, right? Converted into this. So this is a two-dimensional data frame, whereas this is just a single vector, right? So I want to convert it into this. How do I go about it? Taking the names of DQA into another variable, perfect, right? And then adding to DQA, perfect, right? So I need to do that, right? So what can I do? Can I do maybe uh, cbind? Yeah, let's see if cbind works. Okay, let's see. Okay, so I say cbind. So what's my first column? I say names of DQA. All right, that's one. And the second one is, what's the second one? DQA itself, right? Is this okay? Let's see what we get. Now, this is the problem that is happening. I did that, right? When I do this, if you notice what has happened is I get my dates as a character. I'll have to convert it into a um, factor, all right? And that anyways I'll have to do, I guess, right? And then the second thing is DQA is coming as uh, uh, the value here is coming as character and not as numeric, all right? So uh, so then there's another command called cbind dot data dot frame. Let's look at how is that different, right? I say cbind dot doesn't matter. Cbind is column bind, right? So let's look at this. Cbind dot data dot frame. Okay, even before this, what I will do is even in this, let me make a slight change. I want to remove the names from the DQA, right? When I'm combining, picking up the second column, right? So I say unname, right? So what will it do? It will knock off the, but even that doesn't kind of make any difference. The only difference is that I don't see the names here in front of the rows. I see the numbers, one comma, whatever, right? But even that's not something which kind of appeals to me so far. So I'm looking at cbind dot uh, data dot frame. All right. Oops. So now he says takes a sequence of vectors, matrices or data frames arguments and combines by columns or rows respectively. They are generic functions with methods of. So now, so how cbind dot data dot frame different? This is just cbind, okay? And the cbind data frame method is just a wrapper for data dot frame. This means that it will split matrix columns into data frame arguments and convert character columns into factors unless strings as factor is specified as false. So let's do the same thing. What we will do is this time I'm saying instead of cbind, I'm saying cbind dot data dot frame. All right. Let's see what I get the output as. So I get a very neat output the way I wanted it. Names have been converted into factors and unames probably have been converted into. So I'll store it in a variable. Let's say I store it as a as uh, dq2a. All right. So that's my second output. I put in this, okay, and then I say str of dq2a. All right. So what I get is 53 objects of two variables. The first one is called names of DQA, which has 53 factors. All right. And the second was an integer. So, so now what I do is I'll make another change. I will name it as names as date, right? I say date is equal to this, and this I say total steps is equal to this. Okay. So now if I do an str, so I get this date factor of 53 levels and total steps integer, right? Is this clear? What happened here by using the cbind? This was not happening just by using only bind. Okay. Now, what I want to do is compare this with uh, dq1a, right? I say dq1a equals dq2a. Let's see what we get. No, sorry, I made a mistake. I hope it didn't get washed out. So let's just re-execute, right? Uh, what's my DQ1A? This one, right? So I say hit enter, all right? And so I say DQ1A double equal to, so I'm comparing. So when I'm comparing this, see what I get. So DQ1A double equal to DQ2A, I'm getting true at every place because they're exactly the same. The two outputs are exactly the same. That's how I get this way, right? Uh, is this clear to you guys? Hmm? Let me, on the other hand, just imagine, just okay. Now, this explains why I needed to do this step of as factor, all right, converting the as factor. Let me do the same thing once again. The only difference that I'll do is, so I'm saying this command, right? Let me run it on raw data, all right? So I'm running it on raw data, all right? And I'm producing DQ1A. Here, anyways, I have na.rm is equal to true, so it doesn't matter if I had removed the NAs or not. Okay. Uh, let's see what happens. So when I do this, and then I say DQ1A, my output is something like this. What has happened is even those dates are there where there are no steps, right? They have been converted to zero because of na.rm is equal to true. So I don't want that. So what I do is I say instead of raw data, I say na dot omit. Okay. So I say na dot omit. Now when I say dq1a, I say dq1a. Now this output seems correct. So this seems to be the same as the one that I got with tapplier. Sorry, with the tapply. Can you see this? So this command here has given me the same output, but so it says, right? In fact, even it says source uh, 53 by 2. But what if I compare it? Let me compare it. I say dq1a equal to dq2a. All right, dq2a. So this is my dq2a. All right. So it's not even allowing the comparison. This is error in operations dot factor left comma right. Level sets of factors are different, right? So if I was to do a str on dq1a, what do I see? I still see 61 levels. Even though the output seems same, the output it still shows 61 levels. Why? Because I have not done the factor removal, right? This is the reason why I want to remove the factors when I omit some data. Have you understood it now? Why I removed some factors? As such, it didn't matter. But if I want to get a output which otherwise would be showing up, it'll be good that I remove the factors which are of no use. Has it become clear to you guys? What has happened here? When I executed the same command with a combination of tapply and cbind data frame, I get an output which will be different from dq1a if I have not uh, redone the factors after removing the NAs. Is this clear? All right. Hmm? Good. Chandramali, is it clear to you? Chandramali, is it clear to you? ओके हाँ वो थोड़ा सा प्रॉब्लम है आई गेस इसके सॉफ्टवेयर में ना वो हैंड अप डाउन में थोड़ा इशू है आई गेस but otherwise I think it's good. But you understood, right? So at least for me, when I was doing this was interesting because I wanted to compare the outputs and I wanted to see and then figure out where it was going wrong, and that is what I found out. All right. So the, and I found that, oh, this was very interesting learning, because one is cbind was not doing the job completely. Second, cbind was behaving in a different way. Secondly, the factors were behaving in a different way, right? So, and this kind of made me understand the concept of factors very well as the concept of cbind very well. Okay. All right, so moving ahead. So I'm done with this. Then the next is just straight away, the second part of the question is, what's the average daily, sorry, calculate and report the mean and median, right? So straight away I can do this. We have already seen this, right? Mean steps, I execute this set of commands. Okay. And then I report it, I use the printf. We saw the printf, right, last time. Okay, so these are my outputs. Okay, so I'm done with this part. Okay, so now second part is, what is the average daily activity pattern? Now what he's saying is, make a time series plot. When he says time series plot, that just simply means xy plot such that the type is equal to L of 5-minute intervals. That will go on the x-axis. And by the way, do you have this question with you? Um, because you don't have access to this course, right? Do you have? Did I send you uh, uh, the assignment details or no? If not, then I'm just going to mail it to you right away. You don't have it, right? Wait, give me a second, huh? Let me file. So, or rather, there's a better way. Instead of giving you all this, because this will also have my SHA, all you need is this link. Okay, so I'm pasting this link for quickness. At the same time, I'm emailing it to you. Mm, uh, okay, uh, so I've sent the mail to you. Uh, can I? I'll just take 5 minutes of your time. In the meantime, what I want you to do is this. Please go through the assignment and just look at the next part and try to solve it yourself. All right, and then come up with a solution. Is this fine? So, I want you to. So I've sent you the link. Go ahead and try to solve the next part. Okay, what it is asking for. In fact, I already have given you the code. I mean, try to solve it yourself. Otherwise, also have a look at the code to understand things. It's always faster learning, actually. Okay, have you guys been able to uh, solve it or figure it out how to do it? Make a time series of 5-minute intervals and the average number of steps taken, averaged across all y-axis. I will convert my time. Okay, all right. Before doing the average, you'll convert your time. All right. Why don't you have a look at the data first? What's your data? Let's look at head off. Now I'm doing this one also for using the omitted data. All right, omitted NAs. So my data looks something like this. It's a number of steps, then dates, and then intervals. Right. So this is what my data is. Now what do I need to do? Uh, Let me also pull it for. I say I should pick up the data where their intervals are. Let's say interval is equal to 0. All right. So only those rows. And I don't need to have the head. Let's first look at the data. Okay. What is the data showing me? So the data seems something like this. If I've taken 0 interval, what is it doing? For each of the days, I'm getting the 0 interval and it's showing me the steps. Now, for example, only some days have some steps at the 0 interval, right? Others are 0. Okay. Similarly, if I was to see it for interval which is number 5, I have this again some data. All right. I was to see 10, for example, right? I see some of them having data. So, and if I was to see, let's say 1335, okay, I have some data here. No, first understand how's my data. I don't need to bother about doing it into minutes or anything. I don't need to do any conversions. My data is already straightforward, simple to and easy, the way I want it. Okay, all I have to do is, so we'll look at what we have to do. For now, I'm just showing you what the data contains graphically. All right. So we have our intervals. All right, and these intervals range from 0 to 2355. This is the unique values of intervals. Okay. So 5 with a step of 5, this is how they are ranging. All right. And now each of these values, okay, is for all the dates. Okay. So whatever dates are there, so this value is there for them. Okay. And what are we supposed to do? So there are, what we are supposed to do is for each, so make a time series plot of the 5-minute interval. All right. And the average number of steps taken. So what I need to do is, these are the steps that have been taken over various days. I want to average this out. Basically, all I'm saying is, for example, in our class, how many people log in at 6:30? How many people log in by the time it is 6:35? How many people have logged in by the time it is 6:40, and so on, right? Now, and I want this across, say, the last 10 days. So I'm taking an average of that. So it is similar. Is the question clear to you guys now? Hmm? So I'm taking an average number of steps taken, averaged across all the days, right? So that's what I want to plot. So if I was to look at my dplyr, right? So I want to, so my data of interest is let's say A data, all right, and then I group it by, I want to group it by what? What is it that I want to group it by? Date, right? So I group it by date. And then what I do, average by, average of what do I need to take? Steps, right? So I need to take the average of steps. Okay, so this is what I need to do. All right, so I have my code here. First thing, let me change, right, so that I'm in sync with things. I say any dot omit raw data. All right, so I, because I had so I'll just redo this. Okay, so my processing, I'm done again. Oops, Control Z. Okay, so next thing that I want to do is my second part, right? Hmm. So I say dq2a is grouped by, and then I say summarize by mean of steps. So the function that I use is mean. All right, so I execute this, and let's see what I get as dqa. I say dq2a, right? So this, so I get my outputs like this: interval and steps. All right, and so that is my output. Okay, uh, says make a time series plot, so I want to plot it, right? So I want to plot it such that what will go on the x-axis now, in this case interval, right? And then average steps goes on the y-axis. All right, so all I need to do is I say plot, on the x-axis is dq2a dollar interval, right? And on the y-axis is dq2a dollar average steps. Okay, wait, give me 1 second. Okay, here, right? So this is what my plot looks like, but this is not what I'm interested in. He says draw a line graph, right? So I say this plot, comma, type is equal to L. All right, so this is what I get. I can make it more beautiful, but this is my output. Is this fine? So here, what was said? Make a time series plot. So I have my time series plot with the intervals going here and so on. Is this clear? Have you understood this part? Have you guys understood? Okay. All right. So now the next part is which 5-minute interval on average across all the days in the dataset contains the maximum number of steps, right? How do I go about it? All I need to do is max, right? So max of what do I need to do? I say max of dq2a dollar average steps, right? So I'm getting the maximum value, but what I'm interested in is the corresponding interval corresponding to this value, right? So how do I do that? So I now go about saying dq2a dollar interval, which interval corresponding to which row? such that dq2a average steps is equal to max of average steps, right? I say this double equal this, right? Correct? So I get an answer which is 835. So it says at 8:35 in the morning, right? So 8:35 a.m. basically it is, right? Though it is 24-hour notation, here it's in the mornings. So it's in the mornings that the maximum average steps are there. So it's kind of, let's say, people going for a walk, right, in the day, right? That's what it is a measure of, and seems like a morning time that it has come up. Have you understood what it has conveyed to me here now? So I'm pulling this information out from here. Okay. Uh, so 5-minute interval, the maximum steps taken per day, right? I'm doing this. All right. So I get the average, maximum average, and then I can print it out using the sprintf, right? So I have my lines of code here. So wait, I didn't select it, I guess. Wait, I need to have this variable, right? Okay. So I print it out. I have reported it as well, right? Am I done with this part? You understood it? Chandramali went offline. Is Chandramali there? Okay. So next is imputing the missing values. Now this is a very interesting part of the assignment. All right. It says note that there are number of days and intervals where there are missing values. We know this, right? In this two situations, we removed those and then we solved our answers, right? And so he says, okay, we have days or maybe intervals where there are missing values, okay, and the presence of missing days may introduce bias into some calculations or summaries, right? We know this. If we add that, say if we are after that we are taking a mean or an average, we'll get a different answer, right? So he says what he wants us to do is, so calculate and report the total number of missing values in the data set. First of all, that's what I need to do, right? I need to report the total of number of rows with NAs. So how do I go about it? I know raw data, right? So I say str raw data. All right. So I get uh, I have 1756 observations, right? So if I was to say n row of raw data, all right, I get one this. And if I subtract from this n row of na dot omit raw data, I get 2304. So that's my answer. Is this clear? So that many rows do not have, or rather that many rows have NA. Understood this? How we calculate, and then you can report it using printf, right? So that's what we have done here. So first is I'm counting the count of NAs, right? NA count. All right. So all straight away I can say, or easier way is this, right? Complete dot cases of raw data, and I said not complete cases. Chandramouli, you're not able to hear me. What's the reason? Sarvani, you're able to hear me? What is happening? I'm not able to type in chat. Okay. I think you should be able to hear me now. I see your signal there. Can you hear me now, Chandramali? Is it a holiday for you guys today? Second yearites, first yearites have a holiday on Wednesday, right? Okay. On Wednesday it's a holiday, huh? So wait, what's happening? I'm not able to type the message. Ma, did you receive any message from me where I just said okay? What do you see? Okay, because I'm not able to type the messages there, so it looks like this should work fine anyways. So I can use this as a typing, uh, just testing. So you're able to see that message that I sent, all of you, Chandramali as well as Sarvani. Chandramali, you also saw the message that I typed. Okay, great. No, Chandramali has not yet replied. Ch- I think Chandramali is not getting it right. Chandramali, can you hear me? I think he's got on offline again. He got disconnected. Some problem with the hostel this thing. All right. So uh, so we need to so first so what we want to do is we want to fill in these gaps, right? Say we have our data. Let us look at it as header of raw data. All right. So now we have NAs, right? We want to fill this up. So, and from this we can make out that most the NAs are there in the steps column, all right, and nowhere else. How do we kind of verify this? We can verify it with this. What we do is we do it for each. Hi Chandramali, you can hear me? So for each column, right? So I say dollar steps, okay, and then raw dollar steps. What do you get? Uh, Raw data. Why do I get a numeric zero? Oops, yeah, because n row will not work, length will work, right? When I pick up just one column. Why did I get numeric zero in this case? Can you make out? Yes, Chandramali, I'm getting a uh, uh, you got my message? Nitika, sorry, Sarvani, you are also able to see my message that I replied back to Chandramali? So what do you see? Do you also see his question or only my reply? His question also. Otherwise, you were not able to see. Can you kind of send me a screenshot? What do you see? Because then this is very nice. Whenever somebody is typing, if I just reply to that and send it to all, everyone gets uh, both of the outputs, right? Okay. Okay, you can hear me as well as see now. What I'm figuring out is I can reply to the questions here. All right, and if I say reply to all, uh, send to all, then I know that my message should go to all. But do you also end up uh, uh, getting uh, the question that was asked? For example, uh, why Chandramali, Sarvani, just ask any simple question. I mean, uh, so that I can just answer it and see what the other person gets it, and then copy paste and send it back to me. What did you see? Because for now, I don't think you can see each other's conversation, right? What you are typing to me. Hello, just type something and send it to me. Just any text, whatever text you type, I will just. Okay. So, all right. So, Sarvani is asking and rows of data. It is actually n row. So I'm replying and I'm sending it to all. Now, Sarvani, can you just copy paste and send it if it's possible? What did you see? Sorry, Chandramauli, can you copy paste and send me what did you get? Did you also get the question that was asked by Sarvani as it is, or only my answer? Audience question. Excellent. This is how it shows up. That's good. So, which means, uh, so if I was to just, you know, populate it with questions from whatever I see, if I just say K, and so you can also see what somebody else has typed, right? Good. I think this is a very nice way to communicate then. So I, okay, great. All right. So now, okay, so let's move ahead. So now what we need to do here is, so devise a strategy for filling in all the missing values. All right. Uh, all the missing values in the data set. The strategy does not need to be sophisticated, says. For example, says you can use the mean slash median for that day or the mean for that 5 minute interval. Okay, so what is he saying now? He says you could use, so in our data we have, let's say, let me say two values are missing from a particular date. Let's say 12th, right? On 12th, this is NA, and there's another value which is NA. In fact, all the values, right? So each date will have how many data points? It will have 0 to 2355, right? So these are the data points are there. Okay, so all of them are NA. Then similarly, say I have another date, 13th. Now 13th has values, some values here, right? Then 14th has NAs. So what I can do is either I fill up these NAs with what? With the average for the days, initial part, right? What we did was we said, okay, uh, find out steps taken each day, right? We have got the mean value as well, right? So whatever was the mean value, we fix it for those particular days. So when we fix it for the days, what we will need to do is, if that is a mean value for the day, I will have to take that value, whatever it is, and divide it by how many number of intervals are there. So how many intervals are there? Let's say uh, I say length of raw data dollar steps, or rather, sorry, intervals, and I should say unique. All right. So I say unique intervals. Oops, it's interval, right? So I have 288, right? So whatever was my answer in the first part, let's say the answer was some x. So I divided by 288, all right, for each of the, and substitute that as a value for each date and interval combination, all right. And so that's how I can go ahead. So this could be my one strategy, all right. Second strategy could be, I don't bother about the dates. I have these 288 intervals, all right. Now what I do is I pick up each of these intervals. Let's say the interval number 0, okay, and I already have the average value for the interval number 0 by removing the NA values. So let's say I had four, uh, or let's say 53, right? I had 53 dates. For 53 dates, I got some average value, right? I'm going to put the same average value for the remaining, uh, total was 61, right? So for the remaining 8 dates where the data is missing, again what I'll need to do is for a combination of, for each of those interval values, right, wherever it appears, where the interval is 0, right, wherever interval is 0, substitute the value by value of what? Steps. By the way, the only data that seems to be which is NA is steps. Now how do we prove this? What we can do is for each of the columns, right, say n rows, that was right. So we do this. I say length of raw data dollar steps minus length of any dollar mate raw data dollar steps. So I get 23014, right? That's the same answer. Next is I do it for date. All right. Is there any values in the date column which is missing? I get a 0, which means nothing is missing as far as the date is concerned. Then I do it for the interval. Okay. I can find a neater way to do this rather than this way. So again 0, which means the only places that there's an NA is in the steps. So I have to fill up only the data for the steps. Clear? This part is clear? And so I have two ways now. One is I do it from the first part that we solved and then take up that value divided by 288. Second is straight away for the intervals, whatever the average was coming, I use that. Okay. I have followed the second part because I found that that was much more neater way to do it. Okay. So what I want to do is for each of the intervals, whether it is say 0, whether it is 835, whatever average value I got of number of steps taken, I will fill in that for those places where the data is missing. Is this clear? What is my strategy? So is the strategy clear to you? Okay. All right. So the strategy is clear to Chandramauli. What about Sarvani? Is it clear to you? Or do you want me to repeat it? What I want to do? Sarvani, you are there? Okay. First thing is I want to find out where I want to fill in the NAs, right? I was able to find that out. Is that part clear how I found it out? For each of the columns, I said length of that particular column minus the length of that column if I have omitted all the NAs. Okay. So that way I was able to find out that only steps I need to figure out, right? So now the thing is, if I look at the steps data, right? If I say uh, raw data, right? Let's just print it out. So what I'm getting is I'm getting NAs. Where it looks like when a day is having NA means for that day the recording has not been done, then there's the data is not available. And if the data is recorded for a day, there is data available. So the whole day the data is missing. So let's look at, I'll just look at some of the columns. All right, I say head of raw data. All right, and then I say tail of raw data. So I'm looking at, so my apparently at the top as well as at the bottom it's the same. So instead of this I'll say 100. Okay, or let's say 50. 100 won't be enough. Let's do 300. Okay, so I'm seeing 300 data points. Now you see what is happening is up to 288 it's all NAs for this particular date. That's 2012 10 1, right? So 1st October 2012 it's all NAs. I want to replace this with some value. What value shall I replace it with? That is the whole idea. That is my question here, right? I can either replace it with what is the average for a day, right? We already had the number of steps taken for a day. We got that average here, right? In this part, calculate the mean total number of steps, right? Whatever my answer was, I picked that value up and then I divided by 288 and I substitute it here because when I take the sum of all of this, it will become the same average. So if I was to take the average again, the average won't change. This is one strategy, right? Is this point clear till here, Sarvani? So what I'm saying is, okay, so now the next strategy is, so one is this way, right? Other strategy is, I bother about the time interval. Okay, so if I look at raw data, I'll show you. So if I look at raw data and I say raw data. Which are the rows that I'm interested in? I'm saying raw data, uh, dollar interval is equal to 0. All right. So for the 0th interval, and then I say comma. If you notice this is the actual data here. So there are values which are NA, and then there are values which are 0, and then there are values which are as values, right? So now let me just let's solve it for 0th one, right? So I say XX, right? I say my XX is this. So now my XX is a matrix here. Now if I say uh, all right, so XX, now I'm interested in the interval column, right? So first thing that I'm interested in steps, right? So I say XX dollar steps. I get these values. All right. Now out of this, what I had calculated was I had calculated the mean, right? So I say if I was to say mean of XX dollar steps, what will I get? Tell me, if I was to take mean of XX dollar steps now in this situation, what will be the output? Just look at the data and tell me what will be the output. NA, perfect, right? Because I'm not saying NA dot NM is equal to true, right? So dollar steps, I get an NA. I said NA dot RM is equal to true. I get 1.71. All right, and that's nothing but if you look at it, let's see how it comes, right? I say, what am I summing up? Let's first just manually look at it, right? I say 47 plus 34. That's it, right? So 81. So I say 81 divided by how many? 53, right? 53 values are NA. So this is coming to, no, oh, I have skipped the 10 here, right? There was another value of 10, right? So if I say 91 divided by 53, so I get 1.71. This is the answer that I'm getting. How I'm getting it? Is this clear? Huh? Now I'm saying I want to substitute these NAs with this average value. So all I want to do is wherever there's an NA, I replace it with 1.7169. What will that do? Even if I was to take the average again, the average will be the same, isn't it? So if I say XX dollar steps, all right. So what I'm saying is now XX dollar steps such that XX dollar steps equals NA. All right. Oops, what has happened? So I'm going to pull out only the NA values. Uh, okay, so what I will do is this. So as a complete dot cases, all right, complete dot cases, XX dollar steps. So what I get is a false true like this, right? Instead of that, what I'm interested in is not complete cases, right? So I get this true wherever there's an NA and false wherever it's not an NA. And now I say XX, okay, and then I say which columns. So I say XX not complete cases, this, right? So I get this, fine. So I'm getting those particular 8 values here, right? So now for this, and then I say dollar steps. What do I get? N, right? So now if I was to substitute this values by that answer that we got, right? What was the answer there? We said this, right? Mean of XX dollar steps. Let me copy this. So I'm saying this is equal to, or let me change the values, right? So instead of NAs, I'm replacing it with this value. Is this part clear? What am I going to do here? Is this clear? What am I going to do here in this step? Wherever there's an NA, I'm really replacing it with that particular value. Once I do this, now if I say XX, all right, look at it, what has happened. Wherever there was an NA, I got an answer which is 1.7169. Is this clear? This is the way I have filled in those NAs. At the same time, now if I was to take the mean of XX dollar steps, I would still get the same answer, isn't it? The answer won't change. Has it become clear to you how we solved it? What's our strategy? So it's as simple as filling in those NA values with the mean value of the steps. Okay, Chandramauli, have you got it? So this is going to be my strategy here. Okay, so once this is the strategy, what do I do next? Okay, good, right? So that's it. So that's all. In fact, I did it also here. So I'm saying first is I count the number of missing values. Then so now what we did is this was for one particular value, right? I want to do it for all the values. You got what I'm saying? I want to do it for all the steps. If you notice, the same thing is what I've done here. So what I've done is I've created this into a function. So this is what it is, right? Now here in this case, instead of xx, actually it is what is xx? Uh, if I was to replace that xx also with the data, it is my. So what I'm doing first thing is I'm saying new data is equivalent to raw data, right? So I'm not touching my raw data. I don't want to touch it. So but in the new data it will be the same as raw data first thing, all right? And then I replace it with some values. So how do I do it? I say so we solve this problem with xx, right? Instead of xx, let's replace it with actually what is xx. Let me call it new data, all right? New data is the same as everything as it is, right? So which are the steps that I need to bother about? Complete dot cases, uh, new data, so I don't want to, so new data, and then I pick up new data dollar interval, right? Equals 0 in this case, right? Comma, right? So I'm replacing that xx with something else, right? Similarly, so basically, do I need to kind of execute this whole code for you? Same thing will come here. So wait, let me just make it more simpler. We don't need to do it this way. Uh, oops, this would have created a wrong. Let's just do this, redo it. Okay. Uh, First thing is, so if I was to just use it in the, so what I want to do is in new data, I want to replace only the values corresponding to interval of 0. All right. So my uh, and so how do I go about it? I say new data. What I want to replace is this, right? New data, and so I want to replace steps, right? Steps, but which ones, right? So I say new data dollars steps. Yes, I'm speaking, Chandramauli. Sarvani, can you hear me? Uh, Sarvani is able to hear me. Chandramauli is not able to hear me. Uh, Chandramauli, what about you? Chandramauli, you're not able to hear me? Again, uh, Okay. All right. Okay. So now what I want to do is, so I want to filter out only the interval 0 for now. All right. And I want to replace the values there for the steps. So I say new data dollar steps. Which ones? I'm saying new data where what is equal to what? New data dollar interval is equal to 0 and new data dollar steps is equal to NA. Is this fine? This is where I want to replace something. Okay. So first let us look at what is it that we get. Okay. So I'm getting, wait. So I can't straight away, I guess, use this. When I say new data dollars steps is equal to NA, I get a wrong answer. I have to use complete dot cases. All right. Uh, so I say not complete dot cases. All right. So not complete dot cases, new dollar dot steps. Okay. So if I do this, so now I'm getting only those values where the data is NA, 8 values. Okay. Next thing that I want to do is I want to replace it with what? The corresponding values that I got from the previous one, right? I have a DQ2A, right, that I measured here. I say DQ2A, right? And then I say, so this replace the values that I want to do is from DQ2A, which column? I say average steps corresponding to, now average steps corresponding to which interval? I say interval equals 0. Is this fine? Now when I hit, is this line of code? Okay, Chandramauli. Oops. So I can't use the interval directly, right? I need to say DQ2A dollar. All right. Now this is what I've done. So I executed this line of code and I replaced these values by the average that I got. Let us look at one more time what I get for new dollar steps, right? If I say no new data, that dollar steps, which ones? Where new data dollar interval equals 0. Okay. Do you see this? So I'm getting 1.7169 everywhere. All right. If I was to execute, and then if I was to say and complete dot cases not equal to, not complete dot is equal to NA, I won't get anything. So is this line of code clear? This line of code here, this line of code is replacing all those values by NA for the particular interval. Now if I was to execute it for all the intervals, what do? I can replace it with a this 0 with a variable, right? I can say X and I can run a loop, right? So that's one way. So I can run a for loop and I can solve it. But instead of the for loop, because I thought the for loop would be a very easy way to do it, I just wanted you to kind of brush up on the uh, sapply uh, the sapply function, right? So this is what we have. So what I do is in sapply, I replace this whole thing with the function. I say function X, and then instead of 0, I replace it with X. All right. So that is my function X here, this whole thing, right? And then I say what are going to be my intervals from 0 onwards. So I can say unique of I can say raw data or even new data. All right, raw data dot interval. I get my outputs. So these are the values that I want to use. So each of these values I will put as my x for sapply. All right, and then the function will be what I explained right now to you. Okay, and that's it. Now I replace those values by dq2a steps equals to x. So this whole thing goes into the function part anyways, right? That will take care of replacing it in one shot. Or I can use a for loop here. Is this part clear? So if I just execute this now, notice one thing. Here I just did a greater than any. I did a greater than sign, and that's it, right? Let me do that and see what happens. Okay. So I do an sapply with that function defined. Okay, and I hit enter. So something has happened, but let's see what has happened to my new data. If I say new data, okay, I still see NAs. What has gone wrong? Something is not all right. Tell me, why do I still see NAs in the new data in spite of the fact that I have run this command and assume that this command is all correct? Why do I still see NAs in the new data? Any guess? Can you, if I say everything is correct and still new data is not showing up the correct result, what is the reason? So the basic reason is that new data lies in the environment, right? That's where it is. Sapply is using new data. No, no, it's not because of na.rm. It is because of the environment issues, right? So what is happening is now new data lies here, okay, in the environment. Below this, in this environment, there's this function that we have defined, which is being used in sapply. How will this function access new data? It cannot directly, right? Just by doing this, it is within the environment or within that function. So if I want to get something accessed from this environment, if I want to change it, I will need to use this. This is basically for the environment above also. All right. So if I change the syntax to double greater than sign for the arrow, then it'll work fine. Now, say, if I say uh, length of uh, new data dollar steps, I get this. All right. I say minus na length of na dot omit new data dollar steps. I get 2296. All right. Now, when I execute this command, let's see what we get. So I have taken this, I've replaced that thing. Okay. I execute my previous command. I get 0, which means everywhere the data has been replaced now. Is this clear? Why I needed to use the greater than sign? Because of the environment issues. Because dq2a also is in the environment above this. It is not in the sapply. So this function will not work. The function has these both variables in the environment above, both the new data as well as the dq2a. Is it clear? Huh? All right. So that is how you will be able to solve this problem. We will stop here. So we have imputed the values. Now you create a new data set. We have already done that. So we've created the new data set. Make a histogram of the total number of steps taken each day and calculate the report and the mean and median. Same thing. You have to repeat the same set of code now, but with the new data that has been created. All right. And then we look at the last part of this thing, maybe on Saturday. Okay. So we will stop the class for now here, and then I can just do some more discussion with you guys after we stop this. Is this fine? Anything to clarify from what we learned today? So the key things that we learned is, one is the t apply, right? How we can use the t apply to get the same result. At the same time, how the factors get changed, and the t apply kind of gives the results in a different way. And then how we saw that the cbind is not giving us the correct output. Then we use the cbind dot data dot frame to get the output, right? So that was one point to learn there. And then what we saw next was uh, the other important thing uh, that we learned from today's class was about how do you replace the values, right? So we used sapply and how we could actually run it, but when we use the function, we see that the function is going to refer to the variables which are in the environment above, and therefore we have to use the double greater than sign. Okay, so this is for today. Let's I'll stop the recording and then I'll discuss certain things with you. Okay.